Welcome, everyone. If you have been paying any attention to the global tennis circuit over the past few months, you know that there's a massive tectonic shift happening before our very eyes. We are witnessing a phenomenon that has the entire tennis establishment on edge, forcing elite coaches to tear up their scouting reports and established champions to look nervously over their shoulders. The headline we are breaking down today is crystal clear, and the reality on the ground is even more staggering. The whole tennis world is genuinely worried. Alexandra Eala is lifting extremely fast, and she simply cannot be stopped anymore. This is not sports hyperbole. This is not fan fiction. This is the new undeniable reality of the WTA Tour in 2026. For the longest time, the narrative surrounding Alexandra Eala was one of cautious optimism and desperate hope. She was the amazing, promising young player. She was a highly touted Filipina prospect, the junior champion who carried the immense, suffocating dreams of an entire nation on her young shoulders. For years, pundits and fans alike asked the same questions. Is there a real chance? Can she truly break through the glass ceiling and get into the elite, rarefied air of professional tennis? Can a player from a country known globally for its fervent love of basketball and boxing truly make a lasting dent in a sport so historically dominated by European and American powerhouses? Today, in the year 2026, those questions have been answered with a resounding, deafening, and absolute yes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why the tennis world itself is turning around in absolute shock. The narrative has completely shifted. It is no longer a cute underdog story about a kid from Southeast Asia trying to make it big. It is a story of sheer dominance, of calculated precision, and a relentless, unapologetic drive that is terrifying the biggest names in the sport. While Alex's game is getting better and better with every single tournament, more and more players, legendary coaches, and seasoned analysts are beginning to ask a very different, much more frightening question. Just how far can this kid really go? Where is the ceiling? Is there even a ceiling at all? At first, of course, there were the doubters. In the world of professional sports, there are always doubters. Many brushed off her early successes on the senior tour as mere hype. They thought her initial breakthroughs, perhaps her phenomenal, history-making runs back in 2025, were just a momentary blip, a flash in the pan, a brief moment of noise. They believed that the hype train would eventually derail, as it so often does for young prodigies who struggle to adapt to the grueling, unforgiving, week-in and week-out physical and mental grind the senior tour. But the longer this goes on, the more one absolute, undeniable fact becomes clear to everyone watching from the grandstands to the locker rooms. Alex's phenomenal lift up the rankings is no accident. It is heavily consistent. It is coldly calculated. And above all, she is stepping onto court and fighting the absolute biggest names in the world with fearlessness that is chilling to witness. Let's look at the Rome Open this 2026. Once again, Alexandra Eala made her presence felt in a massive way on one of the most prestigious clay courts in the world. She didn't just participate, she dictated. She defeated formidable, tour-hardened opponents like Magdalena Freck and Wang Xinyu, proving that her baseline game is a nightmare to deal with. Her brilliant run was only halted by the formidable former Wimbledon champion, Elena Rybakina. But here's the catch. And here is what the entire tennis community immediately felt radiating from court after that match. Even though she lost to Rybakina, the confidence Eala displayed was on an entirely different level than we have ever seen before. Her composure on that massive stage, against one of the heaviest and most dangerous hitters in the women's game, was at an all-time high. She didn't look like a young player hoping for a lucky break. She looked like she belonged there. And perhaps the most dangerous aspect of this entire situation, the thing that is causing genuine anxiety among the elite, is that Alexandra Eala is still only 20 years old. She is barely out of her teenage years. Yet she has forced her way into the very center of the conversation regarding the future stars of women's tennis. She has now reached a career-high world ranking of number 29, and she continues to aggressively climb those rankings after securing massive, headline-grabbing wins against absolute titans of the sport. We are talking about victories over top 10 players like Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Madison Keys, and Jasmine Paolini. This is why the landscape is shifting. This is why it is no longer simply a good story from the Philippines. This is the type of meteoric rise that begins to exert crushing pressure on established stars. Because while others are still out there searching for consistency, Alex Eala is gradually, inevitably, becoming a permanent threat in every single tournament she enters. Now, we need to transition into the deep dive analysis. Let us meticulously unpack exactly what is happening here, because the tennis world is not just surprised. They are scrambling for answers. The most surprising thing about Alex's extraordinary rise is not just the simple fact that she is winning matches. The WTA Tour has always seen young players have hot streaks. The element that is truly surprising the tennis world, the factor that is causing sleepless nights for rival camps, is exactly how she is doing it, and crucially, who she is doing it against. Beating someone like Iga Swiatek, a player who has had a stranglehold on the world #1 ranking, a player who has redefined modern clay court tennis with her heavy topspin and unparalleled athleticism, is no joke. It is a monumental, earth-shattering achievement. Dismantling Coco Gauff, who is arguably the fastest and most athletically gifted player on the tour and a Grand Slam champion in her own right, is something most veterans cannot figure out how to do. And outsmarting seasoned heavy-hitting veterans like Madison Keys and the endlessly resilient Jasmine Paolini at such a remarkably young age requires a level of tactical maturity that borders on impossible. These players that Eala has defeated are not just random members of the top 10. They are the standard bearers. They are the very face of modern women's tennis. They are the gatekeepers to the biggest trophies in the sport. But when Alex steps onto the court against them, she is not intimidated, not even for a second. She does not enter the arena like an underdog who is just happy to be there, hoping to put up a decent resistance or snatch a few games to make the scoreline look respectable. She enters that court to win. She looks across the net, looks directly at the world's best, and believes with absolute certainty that she is the superior player. And that is exactly when it started to worry a lot of people. Because in the brutal world of professional tennis, it is incredibly hard to make an instant impact. It is a sport that heavily favors the established order. This is especially true if you are an athlete hailing from a country completely devoid of a great historical tennis tradition. If we look at the composition of the top 50 rankings today, the vast majority of those rising stars and established champions come from Europe or America. They are the products of world-class, multi-million-dollar federation systems that have been nurturing them since childhood. They grew up on red clay in Spain or high-tech hard courts in Florida, surrounded by former pros and elite sports scientists. But Alex Eala is a Filipina. She is a phenomenal athlete born in a country that is infinitely better known globally for producing legendary basketball players and world champion boxers than for producing tennis superstars. So every single time she executes a massive upset, every time she advances deep into a major event, it acts as a direct, violent break from the old, rigid perspective of the international tennis world. She is shattering the geographical stereotypes of the sport. However, we must move beyond the narrative. This is not just an emotional, inspirational story of beating the odds. The core reason why she is rising so rapidly is rooted in elite tactical brilliance. Analysts who study the game frame by frame have noticed that Alex's court IQ is astonishingly advanced for her age. She sees a court like a chess grandmaster sees a board. Let's break down the mechanics of this evolution. First, let's talk about her movement. Her footwork, which was already highly touted during her junior days, is now infinitely more controlled and explosive. She is no longer scrambling or reacting late. She moves with incredible, terrifying efficiency, setting up perfectly behind the ball, which allows her to generate massive power from her lower body. Second, her rally patience has matured beyond her years. Young, aggressive players often fall into the trap of going for broke too early in a point. They want the highlight reel winner. Eala used to struggle with this, but now her patience is a weapon. She is perfectly content to engage in brutal 20-shot rallies, trading heavy, suffocating ground strokes, probing her opponent's defenses, waiting for that one fractional opening to strike. And then there are her left-handed angles. Being a southpaw in tennis is an inherent advantage, but Eala has weaponized it to a terrifying degree. Her cross-court forehand is incredibly difficult to read. The ball dips and kicks with vicious topspin, dragging right-handed opponents far off court, completely out of the doubles alley. On the slow, grinding clay courts, it bounces over their shoulders. On the fast, hard courts, it skids away from them. It is a geometric nightmare that forces her opponents to cover an impossible amount of ground. But above all the physical and tactical improvements, the most critical shift is in her mind. She no longer mentally shakes when the fight gets desperate. In the past, when she faced off against stronger, physically imposing players, if she lost her momentum, she would sometimes disappear from a match. The errors would pile up, her body language would drop, and the seasoned pros would simply roll over her. But look at her now. When she gets touched, when she goes down a break, she bites back. She thrives in the tension. Now, she is the one who frequently dictates the tempo. She controls the psychological weather of the match, forcing her opponents to play on her terms. Therefore, it is absolutely no accident that these deep, impressive runs are happening one after another in 2026. This isn't a hot streak. It is the new baseline. Let's review the undeniable evidence. She marched into the Middle East swing and reached the quarterfinals in both Dubai and Abu Dhabi, navigating through incredibly dense, talented draws. She crossed the Atlantic to the United States and powered her way to the round of 16 in the highly prestigious Miami Open and Indian Wells, proving she can dominate on the North American hard courts. And, as we highlighted earlier, she showed up brilliantly again at the Rome Open on the European clay. This is no longer an isolated performance. This is a pattern. It is the undeniable resume of a top-tier competitor. And as time goes on, the belief among the fans, the media, and the locker room is getting stronger by the day. Maybe Alex Eala is truly destined to be the first Filipino tennis superstar to become a permanent, unshakable fixture in the world elite. It is genuinely scary for other players to think about this because they know one terrifying truth. Her development is not yet over. She is far from a finished product. At 20 years old, her body is not yet fully built. She has not reached her peak physical strength or conditioning. Her serve, which has historically been the shot she needed to protect, is not yet at its absolute peak. The raw, overwhelming power of her overall game is not fully complete. Yet, despite all of this room for growth, despite not being at her physical maximum, she is already dominating the top 40 conversation. She is already world number 29. That is what is keeping coaches awake at night. That is to say, when her physical strength inevitably catches up to her tactical genius, when her serve consistency reaches an elite level, and when she accumulates more deep, high-stakes experience in the second weeks of Grand Slams, it is highly possible, if not probable, that her career will truly seismically explode. The ceiling is non-existent. And there, right there, is why the whole of the tennis world is beginning to worry. Because a former future prospect from the Philippines is rapidly and ruthlessly becoming a real, legitimate contender for the biggest prizes in the sport. The factor making Alexa's name so incredibly heavy in the tennis world right now is not just her impressive ranking. It is not just those shocking upset wins against the elite top 10 players. The real reason why it has become physically impossible to ignore her presence is because the tennis world feels that she is rapidly developing a true superstar aura. In modern tennis, an aura is everything. It is a currency as valuable as a first serve. It is not enough to just be technically good at hitting a tennis ball. You need to have an overwhelming presence. It is necessary that you can take the crushing pressure, the suffocating media attention, the screaming fans, and the monumental expectations, all while continuing to step onto the court and win as if it is simply your destiny. And here, gradually but surely, Alex is proving she is entirely different from the vast majority of young prospects. When she enters the court now, the energy in the stadium shifts. She is no longer viewed as a lucky wild card or a cute, feel-good underdog story from Asia. The thought of her simply being a participant is gone. She walks onto the court with the posture of a conqueror. She handles the press conferences with a cool, intellectual detachment. She stares down the legends of the game during the coin toss and does not blink. She has embraced the immense weight of her own potential. This aura, this invisible force field of supreme confidence, is what separates the good players from the all-time greats. She is making her opponents feel the pressure before the warm-up even begins. To understand how this aura translates into victory, you only need to look at how she approaches the game's greatest champions. Against a player like IGA Swiatek, Eala doesn't back down from the baseline. She uses her left-handed spin to neutralize the Polish star's power, turning defense into offense with a single, spectacular stroke down the line. Against a speed demon like Coco Gauff, Eala alters the geometry of the court, utilizing drop shots and sharp angles to completely disrupt Gauff's rhythm. And against raw power hitters like Madison Keys, Eala stands her ground, absorbing the pace and redirecting it with a terrifyingly calm precision. She is a chameleon on the court, adapting to survive and ultimately to conquer. As we stand here in 2026 and look toward the horizon of the WTA Tour, the implications of Alexandra Eala's meteoric rise extend far, far beyond the painted lines of a tennis court. We are, without a doubt, witnessing the real-time rewriting of a global sports narrative that has stood unchallenged for decades. For the Philippines, a nation of over 100 million people that has so passionately and fiercely rallied behind its athletes in the boxing ring, on the weightlifting platform, and on the basketball court, Eala represents a glorious, unprecedented new frontier. She is single-handedly carrying the Philippine flag into the most prestigious, exclusive country clubs and colossal stadiums in the entire world. From the crushed red brick of Roland Garros in Paris to the manicured, historic lawns of Wimbledon in London and the roaring hard courts of Flushing Meadows in New York, she is making her country's presence felt in a sport where they have historically had no voice. But her impact is even larger than that. She is proving to millions of young boys and girls, not just in the Philippines, but across all of Southeast Asia, that the highest echelons of global tennis are not strictly restricted by geography, tradition, or the zip code you were born in. She is proving that with enough discipline, tactical brilliance, and sheer, unbreakable willpower, you can stand toe-to-toe with the giants of Europe and America, and you can make them blink. You can make them worry. You can make them fall. The journey she is on right now is nothing short of breathtaking to watch. Let us remind ourselves of the facts one last time. She is 20 years old. She is ranked 29th in the world. She has already vanquished some of the greatest, most dominant players of this modern generation. Alexandra Eala currently stands on the very precipice of absolute sporting greatness. The old guard of women's tennis, the established champions who have comfortably traded major titles amongst themselves for years, are now looking over their shoulders. And let me tell you, they have every right to be absolutely terrified. The era of dismissing her as a mere prospect is officially over. The era of hoping she might have a good run at a minor tournament is dead and buried. We have definitively entered a new era. We have entered the era where Alexandra Eala is a permanent, looming, lethal threat to every single draw she enters, anywhere in the world. The tennis world is worried, and quite frankly, they should be, because Alexandra Eala is lifting extremely fast. She has the physical game to hit with the best. She has the brilliant tactical mind to outsmart the veterans. She has a terrifying, undeniable superstar aura of a champion in the making. And most importantly, she has proven that she simply cannot be stopped anymore. Thank you so much for joining me for this extensive deep dive into phenomenal, unstoppable rise of Alexandra Eala. What do you think about her recent, earth-shattering performances on the tour? Do you believe she has what it takes to capture a Grand Slam singles title in the very near future? And who do you think is her biggest rival moving forward? Let me know all of your thoughts and predictions in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update on the biggest stories in the sporting world. Stay tuned, because the story of this incredible young Filipina superstar is only just beginning to unfold, and we will be right here to analyze every monumental step, every thrilling victory, and every piece of history she makes along her journey. Until next time, keep your eyes on the court, because the future of tennis is unfolding right before our very eyes.